The country's deficit has fallen by nearly 75%, according to the Prime Minister's mid-year budget communication. The opposition slams it as full of promises and no solutions. Those released Cuban men now suing the government for $10 million. Plus, hundreds of people line up at a local job fair. We've got those stories and a lot more coming up tonight. I'm Dana Smith, and MB12 starts right now. Has decreased by nearly 75% since 2012. That's according to Prime Minister Perry Christie during his mid-year budget communication this morning. Christie outlined the state of the government's finances and the way forward. Kyle Joaquin has the breakdown.
During his mid-year budget communication, Prime Minister Perry Christie touched on a number of topics, some not as in-depth as others, but he spoke on the country's economic status and what the government has been doing since it took office. Mentioning Stronger Bahamas and the government's efforts in building a Stronger Bahamas several times, the Prime Minister was proud to announce the results of the government's plan for fiscal reform put in place 3 years prior. That plan, according to Christie, saw a deficit reduction by $398 million, or almost 75%.
We have nonetheless succeeded in reducing the government deficit from $539 million 3 years ago to the projected $141 million this fiscal year.
During the first half of the fiscal year, that is July to December of 2015, the government's recurrent expenditure was at $1 billion, with over $605 million on grants, fixed charges, and special financial transactions. Personal emoluments totaled $322 million and contractual services just over $70 million. Now, if we were to break the allocation down by ministry, the Ministry of Finance got 32% of this year's budget with over $350 million. The Ministry of Education, Science and Technology was allocated $134 million. About $125 million for the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of National Security got $102 million. But when you take a look at the amount of revenue government got during the first half of the fiscal year, the government generated over $310 million from the collection of value-added tax and other taxes, $139 million from import and export duties, over $120 million from excise tax, and $111 million from fees and service charges. The Prime Minister explained that government got more money from VAT than projected, and he used that opportunity to try and clarify where the money is going.
This is important as I perceive there to be some degree of confusion on this matter, Mr. Speaker. Quite simply, VAT collections are no different than any other source of government revenue. They are not earmarked for any specific purpose, but rather are allocated to the consolidated fund. As such, they are an integral and highly significant part of the government's overall fiscal plan for the year. They contribute both to further reductions in the deficit as well as to the viable and sustainable financing of vital public expenditure on good governance.
The Prime Minister also took the opportunity to list what he called some of the government's accomplishments since taking office. While the government has been criticized on numerous fronts, Christie said the government has accomplished a lot, including reducing the country's deficit by nearly 75%, the introduction of value-added tax, reforming of the country's energy sector, healthcare reform, the National Training Agency, a $30 million investment in infrastructure development. The country played host to the international sporting community for the IAAF World Relays and the Popeyes Bahamas Bowl, to name a few, successfully regained majority shares of BTC and passed legislation for oil exploration. He also noted that arrears outstanding in tax collection has been decreasing, but Christie acknowledged that there was one goal in particular that wasn't met. The country's economy grew by only 1% due to what he called complex global and U.S. economic developments.
To speak in light of these myriad countervailing and complex global and U.S. economic developments, the evolution of the Bahamian economy has been more modest than we had previously expected. The Ministry of Finance and the IMF now estimates that our economy grew by just over 1% in 2015 as compared to the projected 2.3% in the May budget communication.
During his communication, the Prime Minister also gave an update on CLECO policyholders. The matter has been lingering for about 7 years now, and according to Christie, those policyholders who continued paying since 2009 should begin receiving their money by the end of the month.
This plan involves the creation of a special purpose vehicle to assume the insurance operations of CLECO and to pay out the policyholders who have been unable to receive the full payout of their benefit, subject to the policy not lapsing during the period of liquidation. Under the plan, surrendered policies, death benefits, medical claims, and staff pensions will be paid in full.
Christie noted the completion of a number of tourism products in the Family Islands and New Providence and the effect they should have on the growth of the country's economy. But not to be left out was Baha Mar. In explaining the difficult task of finding a buyer, Christie said, "We are dealing with an extremely complicated situation."
Among a myriad of other matters being addressed, the main focus of my government with the relevant parties has been the remobilization of the project and the securing of new investors and suitable operators within the shortest possible time. Regarding the remobilization of the project, local subcontractors hired by the receiver's managers have been carrying out work for the completion of the convention center.
And he said China Exim Bank and the receivers are working to ensure construction is remobilized to have the convention center complete in time to accommodate the thousands coming to Nassau for the 2016 Inter-American Development Bank General Meeting scheduled for the beginning of next month. According to Christie, the government is also working on a new mortgage relief policy, which he said should be introduced soon. He also mentioned government's efforts to eliminating check payments and instead using direct deposits through the Bank of the Bahamas. The budget debate kicks off next Monday at 10 a.m. Reporting for NB12, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Well, members of the opposition not too happy with what they heard in the Prime Minister's budget communication. During a press conference immediately after in the opposition room, they called for more clarity and transparency on certain issues. The party's deputy leader, Peter Turnquest, said what really stood out to him was the Prime Minister's promise to CLECO policyholders. Turnquest questioned where that money is going to come from.
The question that immediately comes to mind is that in the initial promise to pay out of $16 million, where in the budget does that money come from? Because there, as I recall, and we will have to do our own research, there is no line item in the 2015-16 budget that calls for a contribution of $16 million to be paid to the CLECO annuity and investors. And while we are very happy for them, we certainly are happy that they will be made whole as a result of whatever agreement that can be made. The question for us becomes, who are we going to rob in order to make this payment?
Opposition leader Dr. Hubert Menes said the Prime Minister also failed to present a solution for Baha Mar and mortgage relief.
It would seem to me that Bahamians and other investors and unions and pension funds, etc., can be utilized to complete the project, provided they too are treated like CHEC with preferential loan financing, meaning that the monies that they invest would be safe, would be the first to be repaid, new money being repaid before old money. I think the trustworthiness of the Prime Minister in the Bahamas has been shot. I think his trustworthiness internationally has been shot. So I don't think he believed himself when he talked about coming forth with a new mortgage relief. I don't know who in that parliament or in this nation he's been trying to convince. but certainly not me.
Nearly 1,000 people showed up to fill 75 positions for a new tourist attraction today. Giorgio Bain spoke with some of the job seekers who outlined just how desperate they are for work, and company officials who could hardly believe the response.
Over 1,000 persons have shown up to a job fair here this morning with only 18 positions available. Pearl Island officials say they had never expected this kind of crowd, with the first person being in line from 3 a.m. this morning. Pearl Island Special Events Manager Marjorie Thomas said she was surprised to see the turnout at the job fair this morning. However, she attributed the large turnout to social media, as many people said they had heard about it via WhatsApp and Facebook. Thomas also said the most popular age group at the job fair were those persons in their early teens and early 20s.
Well, it's not very many. It's about 18 positions, not much more than that. But we will keep the resumes. If there is any company out there that wants to have access to this, we're definitely able to share that with them. If there's any of the positions that we have in the papers that they're able to reach out to. We started exactly at 9 a.m. However, we've had people here since about 3 o'clock this morning. Yeah, we actually had to cut it off, the number of persons that we were letting in.
Torina Minus, a 24-year-old mother of two, says she has been unemployed for over a year, and it's been stressful trying to raise both of her kids under the age of 5 with no income. Minus, who is a constituent of the Bain and Grantstown constituency, says she spends hundreds of dollars copying certificates and getting police records with no positive outcome.
Oh, it's been rough, real rough. I'm talking about you're putting applications out, you're not getting calls. Basically, it feels as though that they holding the jobs on for people who they know, like their parents, and who they want to give it to. They're not giving the jobs to the people who are qualified for it. And me having certain BGCSEs and BJCs and still going to try to get my bachelor's, I'm not finding anything. So it's hard for me. Plus having 2 kids, not being able to provide for my kids properly, it's really hard.
Mitzi Sanchez, who has been unemployed for 8 months, said she arrived at 5 this morning and was already number 65 on the list. Sanchez says she was already lined up with employment at the Bahama Resort and was devastated to be let go with the 2,000 other employees when the resort failed to open.
We've already completed the training and everything like that. We just was waiting for them to open up. But unfortunately, due to certain circumstances, they said we won't be able to open up. A lot, because that was my only income at the time. So it was really rough at the first going off, but it's a good thing you save a little, because you don't know when you could end up in a position, whereas you don't know where the next job will call you, when the next job will call you.
Managing Director of Pearl Island, Henry Bain, said today's turnout speaks volumes about the condition of today's economy. Bain said they were forced to cut off the number of people coming in today and will now add an additional day to allow more persons to apply.
It is surprising to some extent, but given the unemployment rate, therefore the individuals that are in fact coming on out, and as early as 3 a.m. this morning, showing that the initiative that they want to in fact be first in line so that they can have some face time for our team that's interviewing today.
Pearl Island, which is an excursion destination about a 10-minute boat ride away from Paradise Island, will officially be opening on April 1st. Reporting for NB12, I'm Giorgio Bain.